Henry Sutehall Jr. was born in Middlesex, England in 1886. When he was just 9 years old, his family sailed from Southampton and moved to the United States. They settled in Kenmore, a suburb of Buffalo, New York. His father was a plasterer by trade. Henry picked it up also and worked as a trimmer, someone who installs and repairs upholstery in carriages and the, at the time, new automobile. While working at a company called E. Denniston, he met and befriended Howard Irwin. The two became fast friends. By January of 1910, the two had decided to leave Buffalo and go on a round-the-world trip which would take them the better part of 2 years. They worked their way across the United States and ended up in San Francisco. By early 1911, the pair finally left the United States and headed for Australia. Once they landed there, they would work at whatever jobs they could find and even made money by playing musical instruments. It was at this time in Sydney, Australia, that Henry met a young woman with whom he fell in love and became engaged to. Along with Howard, the two friends decided to continue their trip, but once it was over, Henry was going to return to Australia to marry his sweetheart. For some reason, Henry and Howard departed Australia separately. It was said that they met up again briefly in South Africa and eventually saw each other again once they made it to England in early 1912. The two friends were then going to finish their trip together by sailing back to the United States. Henry booked passage on the newest White Star liner, the RMS Titanic. It is not known exactly why, but for some reason, Howard did not board the ship and possibly sailed home earlier. News might have reached him about the death of his love interest, a young woman named Pearl. Perhaps he wanted to return home after hearing about this tragic loss. But by April 1912, Henry did board the Titanic, and he even had some of Howard's luggage on board with him. Henry traveled as a third-class passenger in steerage. Nothing is known about Henry's actions on board the Titanic, or what he did or where he went on the night the ship struck the iceberg. But we do know that Henry Sutehall perished in the sinking. He was 25 years old. His body was never found. Afterward, his father was named the executor of Henry's estate, and the family was eventually paid $200 by the White Star Line in 1916. Henry was never able to complete his journey and return to marry the woman he loved. Her name is lost to history. His friend Howard Irwin did return to the United States and eventually married. He lived in various places until his death in 1953. But one unique aspect to this story came about 40 years later in 1993. Salvage efforts at the Titanic wreck site focused the world's attention on a steamer trunk that was brought up from the depths. It was identified as belonging to Howard Irwin. Inside were found love letters to Howard from Pearl and others from his family. It also included a diary, which Howard kept as he journeyed around the world. Unfortunately, neither Henry nor Howard were able to marry their sweethearts in the end. Thanks for watching Profiles from the Titanic.